My name is Neil Fowler. I'm a qualified lawyer from New Zealand, and I recently passed the QLTS assessments on my first attempt. I've spent most of my professional legal career actually working in emerging markets, and principally in Russia and other parts of the CIS. I originally studied Russian as well as law at school and university, and that's why I found myself for over 20 years working in Russia. Principally, I've been working as an in-house lawyer for various institutions, including investment banks, investment management entities, and currently at the moment a private equity fund that does direct investments into Russia. I wanted to take the QLTS principally in order to be a dual qualified lawyer, and in particular to have the qualifications and standing of being an English qualified solicitor. In a lot of the work that I do in-house for our cross-border transactions, most of the transactional documentation is governed by English law. And I wanted to be able to be in a position with any of my colleagues and other lawyers to be able to have standing and be qualified to make statements and judgments on matters of English law. I decided to take a preparation course because I knew that my up-to-date knowledge of matters of English law, given the rather long time it's been since I've been at university, was not up to the standard. Although I have a general understanding of some of the main subject areas from my own practice and knowledge, there were many specific areas in the coursework that I knew that I would need assistance on in order to pass the modules. Particularly, these included issues of EU law, questions on ethics, accounting, some issues of tax, and in particular, English property law. I chose QLTS because they looked the most impressive to me from the online advertising and their website, which I looked at extensively. I did, of course, look at other competitors, but comparing the various costs, the samples of the course books that were available, and the feedback that I saw both in this format and other people's testimonials, indicated that QLTS was a pretty good place to turn to. Well, overall, I think the experiences were very good, and clearly, having managed to pass the first time, it was obviously a successful sort of partnership. The course materials are daunting, and when you start the multi-choice part of it, you get a huge amount of materials that you need to work through, as well as a significant amount of online resourcing as well. This was initially, I have to say, quite daunting, but by tackling the various topics sort of one by one and in an order that appealed to me personally in terms of interest, you're able to really start the process reasonably well and then understand how the coursework works. I particularly enjoyed, after each module, being able to go to the online multi-choice questionnaires, which give you a pretty good indication of A, the sorts of questions that you're going to be asked, and B, obviously, where you need further work in order to beef up some of the knowledge. In terms of the MCT part of the course, clearly the most beneficial part were the mock tests. They're presented exactly as you're required to sit them on the day. You have a clock timing down the 90 minutes, and it really puts you under pressure in terms of continuing to roll over answering the questions regularly, as well as the random nature of the questions that come up. When you're studying the modules for the MCT tests, you obviously then have the first set of multi-choice questions all within that subject matter, but the online tests and the mock tests clearly break those all up in a random nature, and that is clearly very good practice. For the MCT test, I was enrolled in February. which meant that I had a 2 or 3 week period over Christmas and New Year holidays to be able to do most of my preparation. I had started reading various of the course books in September the previous year, but by the time I actually went on holiday over the Christmas period, I'd only gone through 2 or 3 of them and really needed the time over Christmas to sort of knuckle down and go through the rest of the issues. The test, if I remember correctly, was in the middle of February, and I would say by the middle to end of January, I still had 3 or 4 topics to go through. It was a hard slog with a bit of last-minute cramming towards the end, but it worked out well in the end. The MCT, I felt, I guess, reasonably prepared, but I knew that there were issues on which I was certainly weaker. And where I'd spent less time studying. However, the mock tests that I'd done, and I guess in the end I'd done 11 to 12 out of the 15, all indicated that I was passing, and with a reasonable buffer. So I went into them, I guess, reasonably confident, but you never know how it's going to go, of course, until you've done all 6 hours of the exam with the full 180 questions. In terms of the OSCE assessments, I think overall I had a clearer and slightly more confident idea of how I would do going into those assessments. This was because of the more immediate nature of the feedback that you get when you're doing the assessments with the tutors. Not only are they able to give you guidance on how you've answered and the questions that you've answered, but also they give you very good pointers in terms of the advocacy issues that you need to touch on and such things as the interviewing technique. I think one of the main aspects of the assistance which I have achieved through doing the QLTS course was actually the module on contract law. I found it very helpful to be reminded and to relearn some of the aspects of English contract law that I'd forgotten about. Additionally, I did find the business law modules very useful as they come up quite regularly in my day-to-day job as well. With respect to the MCT, I think that on balance, it is better to have some sort of preparation before the assessments take place. Whether or not they increase your knowledge depends on how much you know before you do the assessments, of course, but what they gave me was an excellent sense of the sorts of questions that are being asked, and therefore they give you a little bit of more confidence that you need going into the exams. In terms of the OSCE assessments, they're certainly the interviewing and advocacy modules, to my mind, are invaluable in terms of preparation for the assessments themselves. The advice that I'd give, I think, is when you're studying for both the MCT and the OSCE, start with a subject area that you're more familiar with or that you enjoy more, so that you can get, again, into the habit of some regular study and then undertaking the various online assessments or mock tests that follow up those modules. It gets you, I guess, into the habit again of doing a little bit of study at regular times, but it also then gets you familiar with the coursework, with the drafting and the coursework, and with the tests themselves, so that you can then become a little bit more confident going into some of those other modules that you might not be more familiar with. I think the answer to that question depends to some extent on whether you're an in-house lawyer or whether you work in private practice. Basically, however, the skills that you need are the same. The basic skills of being able to draft well, to be able to analyse well, to be able to explain and advance arguments well, whether orally or whether through the drafting process. Particularly in-house, you obviously need to be a good commercial lawyer. You need to understand the business, you need to get close to the business, and you need to understand the risks inherent in that business.